The South China Sea, one of the most dangerous flashpoints on the planet. Beneath the calm blue waves, powerful nations have clashed over invisible borders and national pride. But few people know that one tense encounter nearly turned into a full-scale war between two of the world's greatest powers, the United States and China. It all started on a quiet morning, when a U.S. Navy destroyer was conducting a routine freedom of navigation patrol through contested waters. To the crew, it was just another day, until radar screens began to light up with unidentified contacts rapidly closing in. Something was very wrong. Voices filled the command center, tense and sharp. Orders were shouted, coordinates checked, and within seconds, the calm professionalism of the U.S. Navy shifted into combat readiness. No one aboard knew that they were about to witness a confrontation that could have changed history forever. A Chinese warship appeared on the horizon, massive, gray, and cutting through the sea like a blade. It wasn't just shadowing the U.S. ship. It was closing the distance at alarming speed. The message was clear: you're not welcome here. Tensions between Washington and Beijing had been rising for months. Satellite images showed new Chinese bases being built on artificial islands, each one armed with radar systems and missile batteries. The United States called it a threat to free navigation. China called it defending their sovereignty. As the Chinese destroyer drew closer, American sailors could see the red flag waving from its mast, a warning backed by firepower. Every second felt longer than the last, as two warships from rival superpowers faced each other in the middle of disputed waters. Then came the voice, a sharp, commanding Chinese officer echoing through the radio frequencies. Unidentified U.S. vessel, you are entering Chinese territorial waters. Leave immediately or face consequences. The calm tone carried a threat that everyone understood. The U.S. Navy captain didn't flinch. He responded firmly, citing international law and freedom of the seas. His words were professional, but his crew could sense the tension in his voice. They all knew that one wrong word could trigger chaos. Both ships kept their course, neither side willing to back down. The ocean between them became a line of pride, where political pressure met human fear. The world had no idea that two navies were staring down the barrel of potential war. Without warning, the Chinese warship made a sharp turn, slicing through the waves and steering dangerously close to the U.S. destroyer. Sirens blared on both vessels as alarms filled the air. The distance between the two steel giants shrank to less than 100 yards. Sailors rushed to stations, gripping their weapons and bracing for impact. On the bridge, officers shouted commands as the sea churned violently between the ships. Cameras rolled, recording every second that could later become evidence or history. For those few minutes, the ocean felt smaller than ever. Two nations, billions of people, and decades of diplomacy balanced on a few meters of water. If either captain made the wrong decision, the world could wake up to a war no one was ready for. Eyewitnesses later described the moment as pure chaos. The Chinese ship cut across the bow of the U.S. destroyer at a distance of just 45 yards, close enough for crew members to see faces on the opposing deck. The U.S. captain barked, hard right rudder, and the ship narrowly avoided collision. Had the destroyer been a second slower, hundreds could have died instantly. The force of impact between two fully loaded warships could have sent debris and fuel scattering across the sea, a spark away from ignition. The ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. China was making it clear that the South China Sea was their domain, and the U.S. was challenging that claim directly. What came next would determine whether both sides could pull back before disaster struck. Within hours, Washington and Beijing were on high alert. Satellite imagery confirmed the encounter, and intelligence reports spread across global newsrooms. The Pentagon accused China of dangerous and unprofessional maneuvers. China countered, calling the U.S. Navy's actions provocative and unlawful. Across the world, analysts warned that the situation could spiral out of control. The markets reacted, and military bases from Japan to Guam quietly raised their readiness levels. It wasn't just about one sea, it was about dominance in the Indo-Pacific. Inside the White House Situation Room, top officials reviewed footage of the near collision. Every frame told the same story. The world had just come within seconds of a catastrophic military clash. While diplomats traded words, a quieter battle unfolded beneath the surface. American submarines tracked Chinese movements, while reconnaissance aircraft from both sides circled overhead. The confrontation at sea wasn't just a standoff, it was a test of intelligence, endurance, and will for the sailors involved. Life returned to routine drills and long hours, but the tension never truly left. Every radar contact, every sonar ping could mean another close call. For months, that same stretch of ocean remained on edge, as if waiting for the next spark. The US Navy's ability to stay calm under such conditions earned worldwide respect. Behind the discipline were men and women who carried the weight of avoiding World War III, all while doing their duty far from home after the incident. Emergency hotlines between Washington and Beijing went active. Messages were exchanged not with threats, but with restrained caution. Both governments understood the danger of a single mistake escalating into a global nightmare. China insisted the US provoked the encounter, while the Pentagon demanded accountability. Each side used carefully chosen words, but the undertone was clear. Any repeat of this behavior could cross the line into open confrontation. News outlets replayed the footage endlessly, showing to ships passing within meters of disaster. For many Americans and Chinese citizens, it was the first time they realized how easily a routine patrol could ignite a world war. The event became a case study for military academies worldwide. Experts called it a masterclass in crisis control, showing how discipline and quick thinking can prevent catastrophe. Both captains, despite representing rival nations, displayed restraint that saved countless lives. It reminded the world that modern warfare isn't always about pulling the trigger. Sometimes it's about knowing when not to. The ocean that almost became a battlefield turned into a symbol of what happens when power meets patience years later. Naval officers would quietly admit that the lessons learned that day shaped future policies. It forced both nations to improve communication channels and reminded everyone that even superpowers can bleed from small mistakes. Today, that stretch of the South China Sea remains tense. US warships still patrol, Chinese vessels still shadow them, and the waves still carry echoes of that near disaster. It stands as a reminder that even a single act of misjudgment can threaten the balance of global peace. For the sailors who were there, the memory never fades: the heat of tension, the roar of engines, the silence after near collision. They stood on the thin edge between peace and war, holding steady when the world almost fell apart. Because on that day, when China nearly started World War III against the US Navy, humanity came dangerously close to learning how fragile peace truly is.